You're up, sir.
Well, for those who aren't here in person, I'll just be a disembodied voice, but I do more or less look like that picture. So, and I will try not to stand in front of it. Anyway, thanks for having me, everybody. Those who are here in person and those who are here virtually. When I did the ASA presentation that Chris mentioned, it was definitely a virtual occurrence, as was everything in COVID. So it's nice to actually see human beings. Just by way of, I put this presentation together. The BVI is really special to me. As I write about the Caribbean, I've been writing about the Caribbean for more than 20 years. And, as a travel writer, usually the first question people ask you, if you say, well, I'm a Caribbean travel writer, they're like, what's your favorite island? And I always answer the BVIs, the British Virgin Islands. And even moreover, when they say, well, what's your favorite experience? It's chartering a yacht in the BVI. I mean, it's such a special way to see the destination. I'm not going to tell you guys that I'm a sailor. I mean, I have taken ASA 101, so I know how to pull the fenders in. I got a few, snag a mooring ball. I can do that. So I'm a travel writer more so than a sailor. But I have, I've sailed a lot. Obviously, if you write about the Caribbean, you're going to end up on a lot of boats. Anyway, this picture here. Before I move on, this is my last trip down to the BVI with the captain, Captain Ben, from the moorings, and so that's my experience. Really, is sailing on charter catamarans with moorings. So I know you guys, some of you maybe will dare to sail all the way down there, and I give you credit for that. I'm mostly going to talk about the chartering and the actual destination, which I know pretty well because I've been there a lot. Has anybody been to the BVI? Okay. And has anybody sailed the BVI? All right. So you guys. All right. So you probably know as much as I do, but I will try to hit you with a few facts maybe you didn't know. So, all right, cool. All right. So let's get into the presentation here a little bit. So a little introduction about me. There's my picture from the Volvo Ocean Race in Newport. If you can see it up there. So that's me pretending to be a sailor. So I'm a Caribbean travel writer. As I said, I've written 4 travel books, 3 of them about Rhode Island, which is where I live. And the book that's up on the screen there, which is called 100 Things to Do in the Caribbean Before You Die, which is basically, as you can see, is a bucket. It's a bucket list book. As I said, occasionally I sail. I did get my ASA 101, 101 certification, which was very valuable, actually. In fact, the reason I got it was because I was writing a story about getting your ASA certification. So it all kind of goes around. But I've done this BVI chartering 3 times, and they were all fairly distinctive experiences. First time I went with basically went with a cap. We went down there and got a captain. The moorings gave, basically if you don't know how to sail, you can hire a captain, and so that's what we did. We went down there 6 or 7 days, I forget, but and they just pick a captain from a pool. It's not like you really have a chance to say, oh, I want this guy or I want this guy, but it was really great, actually. I mean, he's had local guy, a lot of local knowledge, really the kind of person, especially your first time, that you want to have along, if you don't really know much about the destination or even much about sailing. The second time I went down with a friend who's a captain, and so we bareboated, we bareboated it, and he took the helm, and he actually gave me some advice here, which I'll get to a little bit about the challenges of doing that for the first time. I mean, he's a boater here. He lives in Newport in Rhode Island and Connecticut, but he had never really piloted a boat that big. So it was an interesting challenge for him. And the last time I think I showed you, Captain Ben, that was really unusual because it was me and the captain, and really because I was writing a story about the BVI, basically we were just using the boat as transportation. It wasn't really as much about the chartering experience as just getting from point A to point B, because in fact that is the easiest way to get around the BVI is by boat. So it's just a practicality, but it's an important point because again, if you're in a destination, an archipelago like the BVI is, easiest way to get around is on boats. So, and part of the value of chartering or sailing is it's your basic transportation, and include, in addition to your home and your dining room and everything else. So as I said, the book is called 100 Things Doing in the Caribbean Before You Die. And in fact, chartering a yacht for a Caribbean sailing adventure is one of those 100 things, because it's I think, such an essential experience if you're going to visit the Caribbean. And you can do this in a lot of different destinations, but I still think the BVI is the best place to charter a yacht. It's just, the sailing is pretty special. There's a wealth of things to see and do, which I'll get into, some of my favorite ones, favorite stops along the way. But, for a 6 or 7 day charter, you're never going to be bored down there. It's really great. And just mention that out of the 100 things to do in the Caribbean before you die, 6 of them are actually in the British Virgin Islands, and I'll get to those in a little bit. But obviously, to me, the BVI is pretty special. So how do you get to the BVI? First question, right? I mean, you're not putting the boat on the plane and flying down there. That'd be, I guess, or a big boat transporter. But sailing down there, I mean, I don't know who here would sail their boat from here to the Caribbean. Now, 1,700 nautical miles, at least 8 days, and that's if you catch the trade winds and you go out east and come back. So, I mean, yes, people do it. I mean, it's been done, but I mean, to me, that's way beyond that's out of my skill set. I couldn't even begin to talk about undertaking a journey like that. So for me, and I imagine for most of you guys too, you're going to fly there and then you're going to charter. And so if you're flying to the BVI, you really have 2 choices. You're either going to fly to St. Thomas, which has a lot more service, and then you're going to take a boat over to Tortola, or you're just going to fly directly to Beef Island Airport in Tortola. So, which is more expensive, but closer to where, particularly if you're going to charter, because the moorings yacht harbor is 5 minutes from the airport on Beef Island. Yeah, and of course, the advantage also of flying down there is you're going to sail the BVIs for a week instead of sailing the Atlantic for a week to get there. How to charter? I mean, who has chartered a yacht before? Okay, so we have some knowledge there, and for the people who haven't, I'll just kind of run through it pretty quickly. The 2 big operations for chartering in the BVI is moorings and sunsail. And my experience has been with moorings. Sunsail, I think, is actually an affiliated company of moorings now. So it's sort of the same operation, different name. But anyway, as I mentioned, they have the moorings base in Tortola, where they have all their yachts. It's a full service marina down there. They have a hotel. They've got a store. I mean, they have a spa. They pretty much have everything that you'd want on land, to get yourself ready to go to sea. So, and they have a pretty wide selection of boats. They have catamarans and monohulls. They have, and again, captained or bareboats. So you can, depending on your competency, if you feel more comfortable hiring somebody. And there are some advantages and disadvantages to which way you do that, which I will also get to. And then, basically choose your length of charter, of course. 7 to 10 days is pretty standard. Again, if you're going to get what you want to get out of that destination, you want to go at least 6 or 7 days to really make it worthwhile. As I mentioned, they have monohull sailboats, they have sailing catamarans, they have some power yachts, which are also catamarans. Boats range in size from 35 to 52 feet. They have 3 to 5 cabins. That's pretty much across the fleet. That's the range, and they can accommodate 6 to 12 passengers. And there's a little star after that, because part of the calculus here, if you're going to, again, if you've chartered, you already know this, but if you have a captain, the captain needs a cabin. So if it's a 4 cabin catamaran and you're giving 1 to the captain, then it's a 3 cabin catamaran for you and 2 of your best friends, basically, which comes into play when you start talking about cost, because the more ways, obviously, you can split the cost, the cheaper it is. So if the captain is taking 1 of them, you can't split it as much. So I mentioned the marina there in the moorings yacht harbor in Tortola. I think really one of the great things about their operation is how hands-on it is in advance of the trip. Once you make your reservations, they're pretty, pretty on the ball in terms of like contacting you and making, and asking you whether you want to provision the boat, not provision the boat, getting you the menu, the prices, everything in advance. And they'll really will counsel you basically on what you should bring, how much you should bring for your trip. So, it goes without saying, provisioning is a way to, everybody wants to provision to some extent, obviously, but the more meals you can cook yourself, the less you're paying to go out to dinner, right? So you can order all, again, before you even step on the boat or even step in BVI, you can order all of your food online in advance. The prices are pretty transparent. And actually, the prices, you expect to kind of get ripped off a little bit, or at least pay higher prices on an island, or get soaked a little bit for being a boater or whatever. But honestly, the prices really were, when I did this in 2023, the last time I looked at them, and I know the egg prices have gone up since then, but it was $2.50 for a dozen eggs. All right, so it was really pretty comparable to what you would have paid here in 2023. A bottle of Mount Gay, I think was $12. It was, so it's not like they're soaking you on the food. So some people do bring food down. You can also go to the supermarket in Road Town in Tortola. There's a nice little market in Trellis Bay, which is right next to the airport. Yep.
People used to like free steaks and fly them down.
Exactly.
Are you still allowed to do that?
The only problem is agricultural products like vegetables because of insects and stuff. Steaks you can bring. I think you can bring drinks and things like that. But yeah, there is a limit on how much alcohol you can bring into the destination. And, again, the agricultural things, because they don't want to spread insects and things like that. But yeah, for steaks, I would think for sure. Actually, they're really expensive stuff you can bring. Yeah. And of course, there are great restaurants ashore. And I've got my favorites, which I'm happy to share, maybe during the Q&A at the end. But so every time we've done this, it's been a mix of cooking our own stuff and getting on shore and trying out some of the local restaurants, and actually some really nice restaurants right in the marinas. Leverick Bay has a nice restaurant, for example. So there's, you have some pretty good options. You're not gonna be stuck eating mac and cheese every night. So obviously what it costs to charter and how to save money, big questions. Of course, it varies by the season, by the length of the charter, by the size of the boat. You can actually save quite a bit going in the off season. If I remember correctly, you could get into one of their charter yachts in the off season for as low as like $8,000 or $9,000. Prices range upwards from there. $15,000, $20,000 for a week, 6 nights. So 15 is kind of a nice average for a 6-night charter of a sailing catamaran, more or less what we paid. And of course, your costs are going to include provisions and moorings when you have to pay for them. I forgot to put in here the gratuity. If you hire a captain, there is, it's customary to tip the captain, so there's a little more expense there. But again, the way to save a little bit of money when you're doing this is first and foremost, if you can bareboat, not only do you get that extra cabin that you can get someone to split the costs, but also you're paying the captain about $2,000 plus the customary gratuity. I forget what it is, but it's a percentage of the charter is supposedly the customary gratuity, so it adds up. It's not chump change. So obviously you save money by bringing your own food, as you mentioned. Freeze your own steaks. Bring your own steaks. Do your own cooking on board. Use all the cabins if you can. You have somebody who can sail. And I think this is the really important point about the cost, because I think people think of this as a super expensive vacation. I mean, it is. You look at $15,000 per week. It sounds like a lot of money, but if you split that 15 by 4 couples, it works out to maybe $600 a night. it's what you're paying in a hotel in BVI, especially now. I mean, hotel prices have gone insane. So, it's, you can get a cheap hotel in the BVI, but the ones you want to stay in are going to be, $600, $700 a night. So, and I was said, you're not only getting a place to stay, you're getting your transportation from point to point. If you wanted to, if you were in a hotel and you wanted to go to Joost Van Dyke, you'd have to get a ferry or a boat out there, and that's several $100s to do that. So, I like that argument in particular for doing this. That it's because you're not rooted to one spot. You can see all the islands. Navigation, and again, I'm not going to pretend I'm a sailor here, but I just wanted to throw some basic, ideas. If you look at a map, I think I have my map here. I'll just switch back and forth. So here's the British Virgin Islands, and hopefully everybody can see that remotely as well. If you see Sir Francis Drake Channel in the middle, that's kind of the main street of the British Virgin Islands. Most of the places you're going to go, you're going to be in the channel, with the exception of probably Joost Van Dyke, which is on the northwest side of Tortola, and Anegada, which you have to kind of go out to the northeast to get to Anegada. But a lot of the smaller islands, that you'll do some island hopping are somewhere off of the channel, and so it's usually it's a pretty protected and calm body of water. Not always. When I was on my last trip, we were supposed to go out to an island, a private island, for dinner, and we were going against the tide and the wind, and we were, motor wide open, and we were making like 2 knots, and basically we just said, I guess we're just going to turn around and go back to Laverick Bay and get dinner tonight, because it would have taken us 6 hours to get there. So I mean, you kind of all the pictures you see, obviously the water's calm and placid and the sun's out, but it still gets weather, and of course it gets hurricanes, which is another subject we'll touch upon with the British Virgin Islands, because they got hit pretty badly from hurricanes in 2017. Fortunately, mostly has been built back since then. But if you look, I'll switch back again. If you look at the geography here, you have the ability to hit multiple islands in the same day, or multiple destinations in the same day. I had it in my notes. I don't want to pop it off, but I mean, I think Joost is, from Roadtown to Cooper Island is less. It's about half an hour, 45 minutes. So if you see Roadtown to Cooper, that's about half an hour. Out to Virgin Gorda, I believe, is about 2 hours, and then from Tortola, from Roadtown, and then from the north end of Tortola out to Anegada is also about 2 hours. So 2 hours sailing. I think it's 15 nautical miles. Unfortunately, this is not allowing me to see my actual notes with that stuff. But the bottom line is, you can get around pretty easily. You can hit a couple of destinations a day. You always have to be mindful of your time, because it's also a super busy destination. So you want to arrive places early whenever you can. Lesson I think I learned the first time we went. But you can sail, you can motor there, and again, the point they made earlier, you can get almost anywhere in the BVI in a week. I mean, if you spend a week sailing down there, there's very little that will be out of reach in the destination. Anchorages, and this is basic stuff for you guys, I'm sure, but in most of the popular spots that you're going to go to, and we'll talk a little bit more about what those spots are. This picture happens to be White Bay in Joost Van Dyke, but there's going to be mooring balls, mooring fields. In some places, there's going to be anchorage, that you can anchor. It's designated areas, but you can. And there's going to be day balls. There's going to be boaty balls to make your reservations, and then most of it's first come, first serve for overnight stays. And some of the anchorages obviously are more sheltered than others. Again, For me, like having a local captain really made a big difference because they could take you into the anchorage and they know where the quiet, the kind of the lee spots are, where the quiet spots in the anchorage are. We had some very peaceful, night's sleep because our guy knew where to put the boat. So, and again, just remember, this is one of the most popular boating destinations in the world, certainly in the Caribbean. So it's busy. If you want to get somewhere and you plan on staying overnight there, you need to get there early. And that's also true of even some of the day spots, which I'll mention in a little bit. So I think I mentioned before, my friend Doug, he's another travel writer, but he's also a sailor. So the second time we went down, we bareboated. He was the captain, and so I asked him, what were some of the pros and cons of doing it that way. And so he just gave me a couple of quick thoughts here, which I wanted to share with you. Number one, I think, was you have a free hand, the ability to determine your own itinerary, and particularly to make changes on the fly. You can do that with a captain too, but you really can tailor it very much to your own needs if you're the guy who's in charge, obviously. Again, the cost savings I mentioned earlier, you can save about $2,000 a week if you can sail yourself instead of sailing with a hired captain. This one's sort of the new thrills is sort of it's sort of a pro and con, right? I mean, it's thrilling to be on a boat, a type of boat you've never sailed before, but it's also a challenge. And this one I thought was interesting. It wasn't really our experience I've had good captains both times I went, but I know he's done it since then. Maybe he had an issue, but you don't have to worry about like who that captain is and whether the dynamic is going to be good with the rest of your party. So because you're going to be stuck with him for 6 days or 7 days.
Do you have to feed the captain, or does he have his own food?
He brings his own food. Yeah. I mean, you can offer him a beer, but no, they bring their own food.
Do they cook for you?
Some of them will. I think that's an extra. I think that is an upcharge, actually, but they will. I know they will. In fact, you may have to. I think you have to hire a mate to have them cook for you, not the captain. But then you would hire 2 people to be on the boat. The cons. These are good points, right? I mean, anxious captain, the stress associated with captaining an unfamiliar boat, particularly around the port when you have to dock. Actually bringing that boat I gave him a ton of credit putting that boat into the yacht harbor at the end of our trip, because that is a crowded marina. So, to bring a big boat, probably a third, at least half or a third larger than anything he had ever sailed before, and putting that on the dock. I mean, they will guide you in. And if you're concerned about it, they will they'll send somebody out or send the pilot out and help you. They don't want you crashing into the dock, obviously.
They sent somebody out.
Yeah. I mean, he did it himself, but they definitely had somebody guiding him from the end of the dock. But I think they will put somebody on the boat if you need it. And again, so being the captain is work, right? I mean, having to monitor all the boat systems and it's a fairly complex vessel. It's got a lot of it does have a lot of systems. That you may not be familiar with if you're just sailing a sailboat, basically. Air conditioning and all kinds of stuff that drains the battery when you're not noticing, and then you're dead in the water, that kind of stuff. Turn the radio off at night. So it's a lot. Adulting, being responsible for the well-being of everybody on board. Certainly a responsibility of a captain. And you're still working when everybody else is relaxing. I mean, everybody else is sitting out there drinking cocktails, on the fantail, and you're piloting the boat. So, I mean, which I'm sure many of you are, familiar with being captains anyway, taking your own boats out, but you are doing the work. So, maybe you don't necessarily want to do it on vacation, I guess is the point. So shifting a little bit from the chartering part to exploring the British Virgin Islands themselves. So just a couple of photos here, and hopefully the people remote can see them. Pussers is and this is the rum of the British Virgin Islands. I think it's Pussers, actually. I mispronounced it, but it's Pussers. And then in the middle picture is the Colwood Rum Distillery, which is in King Garden Bay, which I totally recommend going to. I'll talk about. And I like this picture of the Refuse to Sink BVI because it's a reminder that that they weathered the storms in 2017 and have built back. It was Hurricane Irma, Category 5. A lot of places that are very familiar to boaters basically are wiped off the map in that storm, including the Bitter End. Thank you, Bitter End Yacht Club, and also Sabre Rock were pretty much annihilated by that storm, including almost every piece of greenery in the British Virgin Islands was. If you saw pictures afterwards, it looked like a nuclear attack. And then you go back there 6 or 8 months later, and it's all green again. So it's amazing, actually. But obviously, you have to rebuilding resorts is a different story. But it's all pretty much back to where it was at this point. So that is good news. So, again, you're on the boat. You have the freedom to see a lot of different things. You can see most of it. You can't see all of it. So I thought it would be helpful to talk about some of the things that I feel like are the must-dos in the British Virgin Islands, particularly if you're doing it by boat. This is a picture of Cane Garden Bay, which is one of them. This one is probably the most famous site in the British Virgin Islands, which is the Baths. And if you're not familiar, it's kind of a moonscape of giant boulders that sort of tumble down the side of a mountain and into the water and under the water. And it's a really amazing natural feature. A lot of people think it was volcanic, but it's actually just the product of erosion. But anyway, because they got these massive boulders in the water, like you see in the picture here, they create all these grottos and these little secret beaches. And then if you get your snorkel gear and go in the water, you can climb, you can dive under these rocks under the water, and it's just teeming with fish because it's a great habitat. So it's excellent diving and snorkeling. You got the hidden grottos, the hidden beaches. You do have some restaurants up at the top of the hill. So if you decide to anchor there, you can at least get a meal. And there's guest buoys, day buoys there, and also Devil's Bay, which is sort of the next bay over. As far as one weird thing about the Baths is you can't actually dinghy into shore. So if you're there, you can either swim into shore, or there's actually a tether rope for a dinghy tether, and you tie your dinghies up to the rope, and you basically hand over hand into the shore. I guess because it just got too crazy with the beach and everything. Because there is a public beach here, as well as the rocks and the grottos, everything else that the Baths are. The picture kind of does it justice, but I mean it's actually pretty amazing in person. So that would be top of my list in terms of things you have to see if you go to the BVI. So Joost van Dyke, gentleman here making painkillers, which is the official drink of mixed drink of the British Virgin Islands. I mentioned the Pussers rum. Traditionally, it was made with Pussers. This is at the Sagi Dollar Bar. They have their own rum now, so now they make it with their own rum. Have you guys heard of the Sagi Dollar? Everybody? Okay. Any guesses why they call it the Sagi Dollar?
Huh.
It has to do with boating.
Swimming ashore.
That's right. Yeah. Because people would come in with their, they would swim in. So funny story about swimming into to the Sagi Dollar. It was a good opportunity for me to learn how good of a swimmer I am or not. Because we anchored out there, and you can take a dinghy in there, but it's like, oh, it's not that far. Yeah, I think I did like 5 different strokes. It's like, oh, I'm tired, I'm going to do a backstroke. Oh, I'm tired, I'm going to do a breaststroke. Yeah, so take the dinghy, especially if you're going to drink. But I mean, so White Bay is a great. When people talk about going to the BVI and stopping at beach bars, mostly they're talking about Joost van Dyke, because between White Bay and Great Harbor, you've got some of the best beach bars in the Caribbean. Sagi Dollar certainly being one of them. There's a place next door called Hendo's, which is more of a restaurant. I mention it because they recently added some nice luxury accommodations there with plunge pools. So I know a lot of times people want to get, if you've been down there for a while, if you want to get off their boat and stay on land for a night, I would recommend staying there. The food at the restaurant's excellent. And these accommodations are really the first luxury accommodations on Joost van Dyke. So definitely worth checking those out. If you haven't seen them, they've only been open for about 1.5 years now. So White Bay and Great Harbor are next to each other. Foxy's is the most famous bar in Great Harbor. Foxy's is named after a guy named Foxy, as a lot of things in the Caribbean are. If you have a bar, Ivan's, it's also named after Ivan. Foxy's probably probably in his 80s now, but you go in there and he's still sitting with his guitar and playing music from time to time, which is cool. And they have pretty good barbecue there too. So that's worth a stop in Great Harbor. And then kind of around the corner on Yost is Long Bay, which is a little less known, but kind of also pretty cool. You got a sister restaurant called Foxy's Taboo, which does Mediterranean cuisine. And also you can get like roti and local Caribbean food there as well. Also a cool little spot. And then there's Long Bay kind of separates Yost Van Dyke from Little Yost Van Dyke. And there's one tiny little bar on Little Yost, otherwise there's nothing else there, called the Beeline, and that's really worth checking out, because it's almost like a desert island bar. I don't think there's any electricity or anything out there. You can almost walk across, but if you have a boat, obviously you can get over there on a dinghy. But that's pretty cool. And then one of the more famous attractions on Yost is the bubbly pool, which is basically like a tidal pool, but the waves crash against it, and it's a little bit of a hike there. And to be honest, they try to discourage people from going there because it's a little bit dangerous, but that, of course, makes it even more attractive. So, but you can walk to the bubbly pool from Foxy's. So I would say it's definitely worth a stop over on the Long Bay side too, if you go out to Yost. And there's also a floating spa, which I think that's in White Bay. It's basically like a little hut on a boat. And you go out there and you get massages. So that's pretty cool. Yeah. The Indians is probably the most famous dive and snorkel spot in the BVI. These little pillars here are in fact the Indians. That's what they're called. And it's just I think it's so popular, not only because it's sort of on the main route where all the charters go anyway, but it's super calm water, so pretty much anybody can snorkel or dive there. There's really no current. It's shallow water, high visibility, and actually very still healthy coral and reef fish populations there. And this is another one, I talked about getting to the mooring balls early. If you want to stay overnight, there's a limited number of mooring balls here at the Indians. So I remember that we told our captain, we wanted to go to the Indians next day, and he was like, well, we better get the boat going at like 7 o'clock because you want to be there before 10, So yeah, you got to be there early. Otherwise you're fighting for somewhere, to anchor a lot. And sometimes you don't get one. You just have to keep going. So, Cane Garden Bay on Tortola. Somebody just asked me about this as I was driving up here, believe it or not, which has the better beach, Cane Garden Bay or on Yost. And to me, you can see it's a broad, sandy beach. It's probably the best beach. If you like the combination of a sandy beach, calm water, place to eat, place to drink. I mean, that's to me that Cane Garden Bay has a lot of great restaurants and beach bars. Probably the most famous is called Quitos, who's actually, again, named after a guy who happens to also be a singer. So sometimes he will sing there, but almost every night they have a band playing there, and it's right on the beach. So, and again, pretty good food. One of my favorite, which I showed the pictures earlier, is the Callwood Rum Distillery, which is 350 years old. The reason they call it Cane Garden Bay is because they grow sugarcane there. So this is actually a fantastic rum distillery, not one you're going to find in your local package store. It's got a very distinctive flavor. Of course, when you write about the Caribbean, you become a rum snob, right? Or at least a rum connoisseur. So, a lot of rum, there is a pretty decent variety of what rum tastes like, but this is made directly from sugar cane, so it's got if you're familiar with what an agricole rum, which is more like the rums from Martinique or Guadeloupe, it's got much more of that grassy flavor than something you would get from like Jamaica or Barbados. So it's really fascinating. It tastes like you're drinking history basically. And then you look at they have this ancient pot still there. I mean, it really is walking into the past. It's a fascinating place. And you can go in there and get samples and test it and, bring a great souvenir home. So one of my favorite places. North Sound, this was where a lot of the devastation from the hurricane was. This picture right here is Sable Rock, which is, if you're not familiar, basically a bar built on a very, very small piece of land, really just a coral outcrop. So they were pretty much wiped off the map, as was the Bitter End Yacht Club, which is right across the channel there. You can't see it, but so the Bitter End is one of the most famous, obviously marina and boating destinations in the Caribbean. It's been completely rebuilt. In fact, it's not only been completely rebuilt, it's also added some cool stuff, including some overwater villas. So again, if you're looking to get off the boat and stay somewhere for a night, it's got these beautiful little 2-level buildings that you can sit right there on the edge of the water. But their restaurants have been rebuilt. Their water sports operation is all back up and running. Their store is there. So yeah, they've pretty much recovered. Sabre Rock again is completely rebuilt. It was fascinating to go to this place, when it first reopened and just look around, because it's built like a concrete bunker now. I mean, it's like basically the whole core of this hotel is just concrete walls. I mean, so they built it so that it'll, maybe a Category 7 will take it out, but they really built it to last the time. So knock wood, it will. But a cool little place, because really it's just, there's nothing there. It's except it has a hotel with some rooms and this restaurant, which is what you're looking at in this picture. Great place, just stop for a drink or stop for a meal, and some people stay over. The rooms are really nice. I stayed there. Oil Net Bay is also on North Sound. It's a super high-end luxury mixed-use development. Big marina also has some housing design for mariners. It's a very exclusive hotel. It's very expensive. I couldn't afford to stay there, but it is beautiful. It is beautiful. And then Byrus Creek, which is interesting because I stayed there years and years ago, and then it was closed, and then it got hit by the storm, and financial difficulties, blah blah. So it's finally just reopened, and that's a cute little hotel there worth taking a look at too if you're planning a trip down. Again, just these are also I mean, you can just sail around North Sound, or you can anchor there and take your dinghy and just go from restaurant to restaurant, hotel to hotel, check them out. It's a fun day. Can't talk about the BVI without talking about the Willie T. There's so much about the British Virgin Islands that's sort of upscale and genteel. It's probably has more private island resorts than anywhere else in the Caribbean. Places you can spend $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 a night easily. And then you have the Willie T, which is probably the biggest party boat in the Caribbean. It's got the story about the Willie T was that if you went, then I don't know if they're still doing it. If you went up and you jumped off the top naked, you would get a free drink at the bar. But you had to jump off, swim around, run through naked to the bar to get your drink. So, and I've seen it done. So it is, it still happens, but it used to, I think it was more of a 70s thing, than a 2020 thing, but it's still a fun party. They usually have some music. There's always a dance party, gets a little rowdy. But as you can see in the photo, people who are moored there will take their dinghies over. It's just it obviously is bigger at night. I mean, it just becomes a big party at night, and then you kind of, take your dinghy like this back to your boat afterwards. But it's a good time. Definitely worth doing at least once. Just to kind of see what all the fuss is about. There's a lot of history there. This is actually, I think, the third iteration of the Willie T. The last one was sunk in the hurricane. So actually, a few hundred feet away, you can dive down to where the old Willie T is, and they actually crewed it with skeletons, so like pirate skeletons. So they made it into a dive site, which is pretty funny. And again, there's nearby anchorages here. This is located in Norman Island Bight, which is Norman Island being one of the reasonably close islands to Tortola. But you can stay right here. I mean, the last time I did this, we stayed, not even, a couple hundred feet away from the Willie T, far enough away that we didn't hear the sound, but close enough that we could go over and get a drink pretty easily. So, and actually very calm, quiet anchorage too. So, and I said, Willie T is located in the Norman Island Bight or Bay. Norman Island itself is definitely worth a visit. If you can see in the picture here, they've got these cool sea caves that you can swim in and out of. Again, nice anchorage there. Interesting fact, Norman Island was the inspiration for Robert Louis Stevenson's Treasure Island. So there, of course, there's a rumor that there's buried treasure somewhere on Norman Island. But really the only things that are there now is a restaurant, which is actually very good, the Pirates Bite restaurant. And then a couple of hiking trails. I mean, I know there's been talk of developing it, but so far so good. It's pretty much been left alone. A nice stopover. And I mentioned that like rum, Cooper Island is very close to Tortola, probably the closest place you would go from a lot of times the first place you go once you come out of the yacht harbor. It's got a great restaurant, very reasonably priced, both for the restaurant and actually the accommodations out there, comparatively anyway. But the picture is actually of their rum bar, which is amazing. They have hundreds of bottles of rum, really rare stuff from all over the Caribbean. It's one of the best rum bars in the Caribbean, on this little tiny island, and a brewery. So, you can get a nice drink and nice meal, stay over if you want. Definitely a good place to just come and, spend a couple hours. I think Anegada is last. So I think I said 9. I think this is 9. Anegada is the most outlying of the British Virgin Islands. It's about a 2-hour sail from North Bay, from Virgin Gorda. Unlike all the other islands in the British Virgin Islands, which are volcanic, this one's actually a low-lying coral island, so low, in fact, that you really won't see it until you're almost on top of it. The tallest thing on the island are trees, and they're not that tall. So, it's famous. It had the Anegada Lobster Festival is their biggest event. It's known for lobster. What you're seeing in the picture here are these conch middens, basically, that were actually started by the native, probably I forget it was the Arawaks or the Carib Indians, but anyway, they would catch the conch, eat the conch, throw the shells on here, and now of course modern sailors and fishermen have added to the pile. But it's actually it's weird, but it's actually kind of beautiful. You can get a boat out there and do a little tour, and they just take you in and out of all these things, and you can snorkel, and the water's crystal clear, and it's actually really kind of pretty looking at all these shells. So. So Anegada is really cool to just kind of drive around. If you can rent a moke, which is kind of a Jeep basically, and just explore the island. Mostly it's restaurants and beach bars. Get a lobster dinner. It's not cheap. It's like probably $50 for a lobster. So, but you only live once, right? I was just in Bar Harbor and had a lobster. I paid $50. So, what's that? Well, the corals, overall in BVI are pretty good. Yeah, I can't really speak to the Anegada ones, but the corals are fairly healthy. There's been bleaching all over the Caribbean, so it could have been great last week and gotten bad this week. So.
The hurricane didn't dump sand all over it?
No, I didn't. I haven't. From when I was at the Indians last, it looked pretty good. So. Some of that stuff is recoverable. It's more the water temperatures that really, mess with them. So yeah, I think, Bonaire is probably healthier. There are places in the Caribbean that have healthier corals, but on the scale, compared to like Jamaica or something, it's still pretty good. The thing about Anegada, just to keep mentioning because you're sailors, this is actually, the approach to this island is pretty. Can be pretty tricky. It's ringed with reefs. There's been at least 150 shipwrecks on those reefs over the centuries. It used to be that they would tell you not to go out there unless you had a local captain. I think they have improved the channel markings since then. However, it's still a fairly dangerous path. And basically the advice is if you're going to go during the day and in good weather. It's worth it. I think it's worth it to do it at least once, but it is a little bit more of an adventure than the rest of the BVI is in terms of getting there. experienced sailors, I'm sure it'll be fine. But just, follow. I think you can download a map of the channel, which I understand is very helpful. So that's it. And I don't know if I really blew through. Oh, all right, we're right on time then. All right, more or less. So I'm happy to take questions. I know I went fairly quickly there. But yeah, happy to answer any questions you guys might have.
Hey, Bob, this is Alex on Zoom.
Yep. Hi, Alex.
You didn't mention Spanish Town. Has that been rebuilt? One of our favorites.
That I don't know because I have not been there.
It had a beautiful marina and all kinds of restaurants, but I don't know if it's been rebuilt.
I can't, unfortunately, I cannot answer that. But I will now look up and find out.
Okay, thanks so much.
Yeah, sure. Sorry about that. Oh, he had asked whether Spanish Town had been rebuilt, and that I specifically don't know. I mean, I know I can say most of what was damaged has been rebuilt. Maybe not brick for brick, but it's been a big it's been 7 years now. So I mean, a lot of the stuff has been rebuilt, but yeah, specifically about Spanish Town, I don't know. So. Yes.
Forgive me if I'm in the wrong part of the world. You didn't mention Marina Key. Is that somewhere else?
Marina Key. That's the one. That was the one where that Pussers used to be. Yeah, yeah. Where Pussers used to be. Yeah. It has. I think they put a dive operation out there. It has not been rebuilt as the bar. The phone booth used to be there. There used to be a British phone booth there. That ended up after the storm. The phone booth ended up in the bay, and I think it's the same one they dredged out, and it's on the pier in Leverick Bay now, because there is a phone booth on the pier in Leverick Bay, and I think it's the same one.
Favorite spot. One story.
Yeah.
As to the young couple who after World War II arrived there, developed it a little bit. It's quite a story.
Yeah.
Somebody's nodding, so you know the story too.
Yeah, it's a beautiful anchorage.
Yeah.
It's just very large anchorage, very shallow. And the thing that you don't realize, there's a lot of currents run through that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, it's very calm because it's behind a big reef, but there's strong currents. And I have one story about being there, anchoring there, because it was a favorite spot to anchor with. My wife was suggesting that I should try windsurfing. And that because it was so calm. But the problem was, this current was running through, and I got stuck, and I was just being swept out through the channel.
Oh, yeah.
On the north end until I was calling for help. But, it's a beautiful spot.
Yeah, I mean, and these storms have taken their toll. I mean, so yeah, it is a little bit of an overstatement to say everything has been rebuilt, because in fact, now I'm thinking about it, and I'm trying to remember the name of the island, but in Trellis Bay, there's an island kind of just offshore. It used to be a restaurant. You could take a dinghy out to the restaurant, and there was an old fortification there. It was built by I don't know, I forget it. Thomas II or somebody had built a fortification out there, and that got wiped out in 2017, and that has not come back. Yeah, so yeah, I mean, obviously, it's hard to. Some of the bigger things have come back, but not everything. So, yeah.
Some interruption. I seem to recall you might have mentioned that there were two resorts that were known as rock resorts because Rockefeller had developed it. Does that ring a bell?
Yeah.
One was in Keneal Bay.
Yeah, Keneal Bay, and the other one's in St. John.
Yeah, that was in St. John.
Yeah.
Repeat the question.
Oh, sorry. The question was, what are the two Rockefeller resorts, the rock resorts in the BVI, and there's one rock resort in the BVI, which is Keneal Bay. Little Dick's Bay is the other one. Yeah, that is the one in St. John is not reopened. Yeah, so. Yeah,
That's Keneal.
Keneal has not reopened. I got them confused. Keneal has not reopened. Little Dick's Bay has reopened. Yeah, it took them a while. The issue with Keneal Bay is that they leased the land from the Park Service, and I think the problem is they had a 99-year lease that expired, or is expiring soon, and they're not extending it. So in order for them to throw the money into rebuilding, they don't know how long they're going to be able to stay on the property, because they could give it to another concessionaire. So it's it's more about bureaucracy than anything else, honestly. Yeah. Anybody online? Any virtual people? Any questions?
Hi, this is Ellen.
Hi.
I believe there's a flat fee per person to be able to be like within the islands. Is that true? And how much is it?
They have changed it. There is an entry fee. It has changed because they jacked it up, and I think it was too unpopular. So but there is a fee, a landing fee to get the
Okay.
BVI. I want to say it was like $65 or something like that, but I'd have to verify.
That's not
Yeah.
bad.
Well, it's higher than most other places.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, this is Roger.
Yep.
Yeah, when I was in the BVI, we tried to moor a good deal, and it was quite difficult. We used an application called Bodie Ball, I think it was.
Yep.
And you had to call it apparently only after 7 o'clock in the morning for that day. And if you called at 7:01, you were way too late. You had to at about 10 seconds, I think. So I learned finally that I had to be staring at my phone, and the minute it was 7 o'clock, the second it was 7 o'clock, I called it, and we got about 80% good luck at that point. Is that still kind of the routine there?
I know that every anchorage, not everyone, but a lot of them have Bodie balls, but it's only a handful, certainly compared to the size of the field. There seems to be a couple of Bodie balls everywhere, but yeah, I think, it's the same as just trying to get a ball in general. You got to act fast because there's only a limited supply on a lot of boats.
Yeah.
Anyone else? Cool.
Any other questions? Last round? No?
Great.
Well,
Cool.
Bob,
Thank
thank you
you.
very much. We have a little
Appreciate
token for you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Appreciate it, guys. Thank you.